it's much easier to get financial independent under just studying the basics of money and studying the
Mhm.
system than it is working for a living. I guarantee it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Gray Matter. I want to issue a special welcome to our friends that are joining us on Merit TV in Canada, the United States. Welcome. I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation. Well, folks, it's that season again. No, I'm not talking about Easter. I wish I were. It's tax season. In April is tax season in Canada and the United States. And if you're like most people who live in Canada and the US, taxes are something of a mystery. You know, Joe Biden and Justin Trudeau say, well, we have to make everybody pay our fair share. What does that mean? What is our fair share? How much should we be paying? Can we pay nothing? Is that okay? Well, we thought that it'd be great to have somebody on the program who actually knows a lot about this and has written some really interesting books about it. And his name is Mark Quann. Welcome to the program, Mark. It's great to have you as our special guest today.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to talking with you, man. So absolutely.
So, Mark, I have to ask you, you describe yourself self-described college dropout. How did you get into investing and writing books?
Let's see. Go back 25 years. I was in high school in Cambridge, Galt Collegiate Institute, a great school in Canada, right? And I was grade 9, and my parents had no work. My dad was a construction worker. There was no work, so he's sitting at home. The ground is no work, and the Northridge earthquake happened. And my parents were like, "Look," I was like, I had all my friends, and my parents wanted work. They just couldn't sit at home anymore, just waiting for it to cool down. So they took the station wagon. They drove to California. They wanted to live in California. They wanted to live in the sunshine, and I was in high school, 16 years old, with no parents around anymore. So I started getting into trouble, of course, and stopped going to school. And that was really the like almost the last time that went to school was in grade 9. I think I graduated grade 9. I got some bad grades or whatever because I barely went to school. I kind of ran a party house for a while. I was actually selling cigarettes. My first entrepreneurial experience was selling cigarettes because I used to go to the reservation, buy the cigarettes, and sell them to my teachers and other students. So that was my first entrepreneurial experience in Canada.
Precocious
Was
entrepreneur. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, exactly, selling cigarettes or whatever. So and then I probably partied little bit too much, and then I actually went to California because I was like, okay, this is enough partying. This is getting a little bit out of control. And then I went to California and I tried to go to school, but it was Eagle Rock High School, incredibly bad gang neighborhood at the time. And I kept getting robbed by knife point. Like I got robbed 3 times by knife point, and I was
Wow.
at school, and then some guy, I don't know if he was being initiated into something. He grabbed me on the football field, slammed my face, and broke my teeth out. And I was like, I'm not going to school anymore. This is cool. So that was the last time I really went to school was in grade 10
Mm,
at Eagle Rock High School in Los Angeles. Very bad neighborhood at the time. So
yeah.
that's how and then I ended up back in Ottawa again. And then for a while, and I hated Ottawa. And then I went to Fanshawe College for business and finance. Fortunately, they let Canadians into college even with no high school diploma. So went to Fanshawe for business finance. I wanted to become a financial advisor, but I was super questioning the college system. I'm like student loans, credit card debts, and there was nobody successful in business. There was no entrepreneurs. So I was just kind of questioning that. So I basically went to California again, became a private investigator. I used to chase people around with a video camera. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then eventually
Oh, yes.
I found my way into financial services just through connections and some friends, and I entered the financial industry. Spent 15 years as doing investments, training financial advisors. I was the financial advisor for CPAs, and I just kind of had an insider look. So that's how I got into finances. So.
And to be clear, your book is for everyone, but it's you also make a point in the book of, and I noticed when I read it. And by the way, it's a great book. I really learned a lot from reading it, and I've read a number of these books about avoiding taxes and things like that. And I found that your book is probably the most readable one in terms of being able to readily understand what you're talking about, and it's very very clear. And I know that's hard to do. It's hard to do with a a subject that most people consider complex, like tax and investing. But you actually make a point of you make a note to financial advisors. You say, "My goal is not to have all my readers fire their financial advisors." You say, "Remember, I was one of you. You spent 15 years sitting across the kitchen table, helping families implement strategies to save and invest." And so, you also believed in doing the best for your clients. So you've actually written this book not only for individual taxpayers and investors, but you've also written this book. It's aimed at the audience of financial advisors, and you basically tell them how they can improve their game too, right?
Yeah, it was amazing to me. I was the financial advisor for CPAs, and I've always found that funny because the CPA didn't know how to retire, right? They were scared they're going to die at their desk. So I'm like, this is weird. And then the
Sounds like
CPA would
lawyers.
yeah. So they, yeah. So then I was like, well, this is weird, right? And then the CPA knew how to was telling people, their clients, to save money on taxes by putting it into retirement accounts. But I kind of knew that was kind of a little bit of a scam, in my opinion. And I'm like, this is so weird. And then the financial advisors, we didn't know how to retire because there was no investments that could really retire us. So that's why we got other people's money. And I was just kind of skeptical. I'm like, the financial advisor doesn't know how to retire. The CPA doesn't know how to retire and avoid taxes. I'm like, this is an interesting system. So in 2018, when I wrote Top 10 Ways to Avoid Taxes, I resigned from the financial industry, gave up a good amount of money to do that because I'd been building it for 15 years. I resigned and decided I was going to take a different course and really go down the rabbit hole after I wrote Top 10 Ways to Avoid Taxes. I had a
Mhm.
consulting company for like really rich people, Beverly Hills, Malibu, La Jolla Real Estate Brokers Association has me had a speaker, and I was lined up, and then coronavirus happened and all my appointments canceled. So I was like, what am I going to do now? And I said, I'll start a financial education company for the average American. So I knew all the tax codes that the rich people were using, but I'm like, can I just dumb this down and actually teach it to ordinary Americans? So I actually spent 4 years doing that. It was literally 4 years,
Wow.
hundreds and hundreds of ordinary Americans, teaching them this stuff. And then of course Canadians reach out to me too. But like the guy that built my deck, I taught it to him. He's a Hispanic guy. Well, my wife's from Mexico, so that she can speak. And yeah, like the guy built my deck. I taught it to him. I'll teach this strategy to anybody. Right? It's like, plumbers. You're like you're a high school dropout that hated school. Perfect. You're going to learn it faster.
Mhm. Well,
Yeah.
this is one of the sure signs of a great idea, isn't it? That that it has a sort of a beautiful simplicity to it. And this is true in art, literature, music, sports. This is what we admire. There's no wasted motion here. And obviously, this book has been a real sensation. Your number one bestseller on personal taxes, number one on retirement business plan, number two on budgeting and money management. You got some work to do there, Mark.
Yeah, I got to get to it.
Number one on bestseller introduction to investments. So obviously, you've really hit on something key here. What's different, or I should say, what things do you think key things are different about your book that people are connecting with that's making it so popular?
It's so funny because we sold so many books and nobody read it. Like we sold record numbers of books. We actually hit number three on all of Amazon and nobody read the book. So it was kind of weird when nobody really knew what happened there. I mean, number three on all of Amazon. I was like, what just
Really?
happened there? Like nobody knew what was going on, right? And the only reason we're not number one in every category is we keep running out of books. We ship them to Amazon, they're
Ah,
gone. Ship them, gone again. So yeah, something's going on. We're definitely hitting it. But I think that so the thing about it is, I didn't create the strategy. Buy, borrow, die wasn't created by me. It was coined by University of Southern California USC professor named Ed McCaffrey. He wanted to
right.
simplify how billionaires don't pay taxes. He's like, buy, borrow, die, and it's incredible. Just it's simple. Buy assets, never sell them. If you never sell them, you never pay taxes. Now, how do you get access to the money? You borrow. You can borrow from stocks, ETFs, life insurance, real estate, cryptocurrency, gold, and precious metals. You can do it with artwork. You know what I mean? Like that's what the rich do. So, okay, well, how do we do this? Well, at the time, there's a company called M1 Finance in the United States, and we were borrowing at 2% interest on margin loans. So we'd buy this ETF that pay like a 12% dividend, and then we were borrowing at 2% interest. And I was like, no way, are you kidding me? Like, is this real? So that kind of opened up the door, and then we just have been there's so many cool things that were created in the past 3 years. Like the stuff that we do today didn't exist 3 years ago. So it was kind of impossible to really do as an ordinary average person maybe 4 years ago, roughly. But today, everything's built. It's very systematized, very easy to do. Just buy, you could just buy stocks and
Mhm.
never sell them. And you can actually live off the borrow button. Like you can literally live off loans. And that's how the rich do it. But you don't have to be rich anymore. We start people with $100 in a brokerage account.
Incredible. And
Yeah.
just so people understand, the interesting thing about the tax code, whether it's in Canada or the U.S., and I think one of the keys is that it's a self-reporting system, and you talk about this in your book. And because it's a self-reporting system, that gives you a lot of ability to design the way that you report your taxes. And so it actually is possible to quite lawfully and responsibly and intelligently submit a zero tax return if you know how to do it, right? If you know what to
Right.
do. And a lot of people don't understand, well, Elon Musk, he's got so much money. How is it that the tax man doesn't take it all? But you explain how this works. That someone like Mr. Musk, he's not taking a wage. He's not earning regular income, taxable income. He's fine. He's using strategies like you talk about in the book to give him access to the concept of wealth as opposed to income. And that's an important distinction in the book, isn't it? The difference between income and wealth.
Yeah, you ever realize that income, when you earn money, it's the highest form of taxation. So the government basically penalizes hard work and they reward investing and they specifically reward debt. Now, let's just bring this down to something that anybody could do. Okay, let's say that somebody wanted to buy the next Amazon or the next Apple phone. Okay, the next iPhone, right? And they're like, I'm going
Yeah.
to buy the next iPhone. Okay. But they like normally you buy an iPhone $1,300 in the United States, but you have to go or you have to work for it. You have to pay taxes on the money. You're fighting inflation to earn it. What if they just said, "All right, since I'm going to spend my money on an iPhone, why don't I just buy Apple stock?" And they funnel their money and they have $33,000 in their uh, Apple stock. Well, if they wanted to buy the iPhone, well, they could just press the borrow button, take a margin loan, send it to their bank account for $1,300, and go buy their iPhone. Well, they didn't have to work for the money; they didn't have to pay taxes. They circumvented the U.S. tax system, and the full 3,000. They didn't liquidate the 3,000 to buy the iPhone. Now they're building assets that grow without taxes, and that money was avoided working hard, it avoided taxes, and actually fought inflation with inflation. So that's an example that anyone can do. You could
Right.
apply this to Starbucks or Amazon or whatever. Like you can have the fun stuff, but just to do it. Now,
Mhm.
if you happen to be a business owner like me, hey, those iPhone might be a tax deduction. My whole life is a tax deduction because I revolve around it. So imagine me, I can invest, grow my wealth without paying taxes. If I borrow and that's an expense, that's a business
Mhm.
expense, but it's a business expense on money that didn't exist
Mhm.
before. It was created through debt and it was also never taxable. So to me, it's like a double tax deduction,
Well, what
right?
you just described is part of the what you talk about in chapter 2 of your book, the Be Smart, and that's an acronym, folks, SMART strategy. But before you get there, I want you to talk about chapter 1, which I found really interesting.
Okay.
And you've entitled it "The Pandemic Epiphany: How I Discovered the Perfect Portfolio." You want to talk about that a little bit because I think it really sets the stage for the rest of the book.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I'm sitting around, all my appointments cancel. I had that appointment in Beverly Hills and Malibu. I was doing these public speaking things. I was going to do tax consulting for business owners. And all right, all my appointments cancel. What am I going to do now? I was actually the stock market was crashing, and there's this. It's like a triple short. It's short means you're betting down, so it's betting down 3 times. So I put that on the market, and I'm like investing. I'm making money on the way down, but I was a little skeptical about the pandemic, to be honest with you, just because I've studied the banking industry and the history of banking. So, you tend to be a little bit of a conspiracy theorist, but I was super skeptical
All
about the
right.
pandemic. Okay, so we won't
Mhm.
cover anything more on that. Okay. So I was like, okay, this is
I
either the
shared your
end of
skepticism, just so you know.
yeah. So I was like, okay, this is either the end of the world is option A, or the pharmaceutical companies are going to make a lot of money. I was like, okay, it's very, very likely that one. So I literally, when it
Oh.
hit the bottom, I flipped it around. I bought it's in the book. It's SPXL. not something you want to mess with, but it's 3 times up. And I went, by the way, you can actually go to my Instagram feed and you could actually see the history of my positions I was buying on my Instagram to this day. And I was making tons of money, like just tons of money. And I was helping my friends and family members and stuff like that make a ton of money at during the pandemic. And I was like, wow, we got to start a financial education company. So some friends got together. We sat down at a table one day and we said, all right, what are we going to do? What are we going to call it? What are we going to we said, what do we want to stand for? It was like super high ethical company. Like we wanted to give back. We wanted to find out how to do it. We wanted to remove conflicts of interest. Conflicts of interest would be, if somebody works for a publicly traded company, it's hard to do the best thing because you got a shareholders up there. So we wanted to not never take it public. And then we just started teaching this stuff, and we found out we tried every single investment platform in the United States and figured out which ones work, which doesn't work. And then we had to do 5 assets. We said we figured out how to do it with stocks and ETFs, life insurance, real estate, cryptocurrency, and gold and precious metals and stuff. So SMART is an acronym for strategies that maximize assets. You got to buy assets with this stuff.
Right.
Yeah, so that's the key. And reduce taxes. So if it's going to build assets, reduce or avoid taxes legally, it works good. And if you just use buying and borrowing as the foundation, it works very well. And then there's some advanced strategies in real estate where you can wipe out all taxes. So once you
Hmm.
wipe out all taxes, then you have tax-free incomes coming in that's being recycled into this buying and borrowing system, and you can legally pay zero taxes.
I really appreciate that explanation because it sets up really the ethos of the entire book, and that is you have and you teach an entrepreneurial mindset. So going back to the pandemic, your reaction to that was very different than 99% of the population. Most people would have either been panicking, trying to find another job, or applying for government assistance. But where everybody else saw an emergency, you saw opportunity, and that type of mindset is something that's kind of crucial to your teaching, isn't it? To make people understand, look, when things look really dark, if you just shift your mindset and you see opportunity, that there's a different way of looking at these things. It's not only not as bleak as you think, but actually might be the road to wealth.
I can see opportunities in everything. Specifically, there's this thing called the fear and greed index, right? It
Right.
measures fear. When the population's at extreme fear, which they were recently, I get greedy. I'm gonna invest now because when the population's in extreme fear, they've been panic selling, and that's the time to buy. So you really gotta turn off, the news. The news. You got to turn off the news, and you got to go, all right, look at the fear and greed index, and it helps you invest. It's a simple
Mhm.
tool. It's 7 major indicators. Anybody can go to, fear and greed index, Google it, check it out. But yeah, you can't react with fear because you have to realize that the news makes money based on fear. If they scare
Right.
you, more people watch it.
Mhm.
That's kind of crazy. I like the more they scare people, the more people watch it, the more advertising revenue. So I studied the system for so long. I was just very skeptical, and I can just if people are scared, I'm like, okay, it's time to make money. It's like, it's that's a pretty good simple
Mhm.
principle actually. So
It reminds me a little bit of the that Wall Street movie with Michael Douglas, where he gets up and he says, "Greed is good." Now, we're not talking about greed that necessarily is the type that we're not talking about avarice. We're talking about the ability to take care of yourself, and one of the great things about the book is it does sort of teach this. Don't be afraid of these concepts. Don't be afraid of taxes. Don't be afraid of money. Don't be afraid of investing. And the most quoted phrase, actually, I think it's right over my left shoulder in the Bible. It says, "Do not fear." And but one of the things that removes fear is shifting the paradigm of the way that people think about money. And you have a very interesting concept in here in chapter 3. You talk about what is money, and you ask the question, is a cow money? You want to explain about that, because I think this is really brilliant. I really enjoyed
okay.
this explanation.
Okay, so there's just a simple thing. There's thing. Anything with unlimited supply will go down in value. Anything with unlimited supply, or limited supply goes up in value. Anything with unlimited supply goes down in value. Okay, so that's the first important concept. So if something has unlimited supply, it's always going to go down. Something with limited supply goes up. Now, let me give you an example. Toilet paper. Okay,
Oh yes, I
toilet
remember this.
paper. I call it toilet paper money. These Federal Reserve notes, I call
Hmm.
them toilet paper money. Why? Because in the last 10 years, the toilet paper has gone up in value and the US dollar has gone down. That should tell you a lot about limited supply, right? You can actually
Hmm.
make make so much toilet paper as fast, but you can make that money. So yeah. So but money was backed by something. It was a piece of paper, literally just a piece of paper, and it was backed by cows. The only thing that gave it money was the commodity. It was like a receipt for cows. Then it
Right.
was a receipt for silver. They were called silver certificates. It was a worthless piece of paper, but it was backed by silver, right? So the only thing that gives something money is limited supply. That's it. You're like, why
Hmm.
is Bitcoin worth so much? Because 95% of it already is in existence and the rest of the entire world is going to fight over the last 5%. And people are like, well, it's digital. Well, most of the money in the world is just digital entries in a computer. When you buy a home, they go, all right, 400 grand that didn't exist. They just press the button and they create it. Let's say you foreclose on the home, they just delete the entry. All the interest is bank entries. It's just all the money is just zero ones in a computer, or at least 90% of it is. So it's just you need to take that toilet paper money, like I call it, and you need to purchase things with limited supply. Okay,
Right.
real estate, Bitcoin, stocks and ETFs of companies that are very profitable. The things you use, right? If you
Hmm.
shop at Costco, great. Maybe you should go. Maybe you should do Amazon, Costco, Google, Microsoft. If you're using those products, I like to keep it simple. Buy those. If you never sold them, you would never pay taxes. Eventually,
Right.
you have a big portfolio. You're like, all right, I need to pay most some expenses. Borrow the money. The loan isn't taxable, and then you circumvented the tax system. It's a pretty
Mm.
simple thing.
Mm.
It's
And you
um,
identify five key asset classes in the book, don't you? You mentioned a few of the. I think you mentioned three of them there. What
yep.
are the five key ones, Mark?
Okay, so and by the way, this only works if you put at least 100 hours into it. Like you can't expect somebody else to do it. There's no one. Your CPA is not responsible for making you avoid helping you avoid taxes, and your financial advisor is not responsible for your financial independence. You got to take 100% responsibility. Dig in, understand this stuff. So this doesn't work if you just like dabble in it, right? You got to dig in. But
Mhm.
first is stocks and ETFs. Well, there's amazing stuff out there. There's an ETF you can buy. They build synthetic covered calls inside of it. So incredibly complex stock options trade. You just buy it. You could put $100 and they do all the work for you. So ETFs, stocks and ETFs, that's a huge amount of things you can do there. So stocks and
Mhm.
ETFs is the first one. Life insurance in the United States, there's a thing called an IUL, which I wrote a book on it, where you can invest with no risk. The market
Right.
goes up, it locks, and then it can't lose money, but you can borrow from it. So you can sort of do borrowing with
Hmm.
risk-free assets and
Hmm.
tax-free assets. And then you have real estate is the key. Real estate is really the key to paying zero taxes. There's so many tax codes that I personally use to with real estate where you could wipe out your taxes. You could wipe out taxes on W-2 income, 1099 income, dividend income. You can wipe out all those taxes. So real estate is like the the exit the tax system thing, especially if you have rental properties, anyways, right?
Right.
So real estate is key. Bitcoin is valuable because they're devaluing the dollars. All the money in the world is basically fiat, or I call it fake money.
Hmm.
It's going to go down in relation to anything with. So real estate has a limited supply. It's going to keep going up. Bitcoin limited supply, so on. Gold and precious metals too. You can be buying and borrowing with these things. So if you're buying stocks and ETFs and they crash, well, you could borrow from an asset that doesn't crash and buy more stocks and ETFs. You can recover. You could just kind of go back and forth and borrowing, and as the assets appreciate, and you're
Hmm.
literally doing the same thing that billionaires use, and
Hmm.
anyone can do it. Yeah, so you can start. We start with people with $100 in a brokerage account. That's where we start people when we teach them. When they get to $2,500, we have them press the borrow button and they create money, and we ask them three questions. Did you have to work for the money? Hmm, no. Did you have to pay taxes on that money? No. Didn't you just fight inflation with inflation? They're like, huh. And then they come to their own conclusions. And if they don't like it and they want to go fund their retirement accounts, they can go do that. But so far, we're about
Mhm,
500 people we taught it to. They're all sticking with this system. They're not running back to their tax
mhm.
deferred retirement accounts. That's for sure.
And this concept that you have about acquiring assets, it has other key features. It's not just getting to zero taxes, but it also changes the perception of debt and the way that the debt is used. You can actually turn debt to your advantage, and that gives people financial freedom. But also, it changes the way people look at money as a tool to acquire assets. And so it's sort of the thing, according to your system, starts to snowball. But talking about, just for example, debt. Um, Using your strategy, in a real sense, it's possible for one to become their own banker, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. You can build five banks. You could build five, six banks, and you can basically invest and borrow. When I borrow, there's no application, no credit check. It doesn't report to my credit score, and there's no required payments on the loans. In fact, the dividend interest is much bigger than the cost of the debt. So I
Hmm.
just create money by pressing buttons and be like, that's impossible. Well, I do it every time. In fact, you can go to our YouTube channel, The Perfect Portfolio. There's a video called How Ordinary Americans Can Pay Zero Taxes at the Perfect Portfolio website. Go watch it, and you can actually see the positions they hold in my brokerage account.
Okay. So you've just given us a thumbnail sketch of the perfect portfolio, or at least what would be included in it. And there
Yep.
might be some people listening to this or watching this thinking, oh, well, this guy, Mark Quann, he's a financial wizard. I could never do what he's doing. But, chapter 4 of the book brings it really home. This is the chapter about the millionaire next door, Joe, as in Joe Average, his
Yeah.
journey to $6 million by never selling. And this is this chapter really spoke to me because I think this is something that maybe prevents people from applying strategies like yours. Is they have a sense of disbelief. They don't believe in themselves enough to do it. And so, but this chapter says really, almost anybody, applying the correct principles, if they're disciplined, they can do this, right?
You can do this. You just need to know what it won't work with. It doesn't work with retirement accounts. Okay.
Yeah.
It works only with just a straight up brokerage account. You need to be able to buy and borrow. If I can't borrow from an asset, it's called dead money. It kills the cycle. So I
Yeah.
call
That's
it dead
chapter
money.
5, right? Dead
Yeah,
money.
it's dead
Yeah.
money. Yeah, we don't want to kill our money. If you buy something and you can't borrow from it, secured by the asset, it's dead money. I don't do dead money. I want to be able to buy and borrow from all my assets and keep going forever as they appreciate, as the government prints money and taxes everybody to death. The thing about it is that it's not about tax avoidance or paying no taxes. It's that if you looked at the United States, and I don't want to give you some be the Debbie Downer here, but if you looked at anybody under 50, I look at the numbers and almost 99% of them are going to have to work until they die.
Yeah.
It's brutal. Like if you
Yeah.
actually ran the numbers and you're like, not what if happens if 99% of the population fell into poverty? I mean, that's it. The United States is done. We were already on the verge of bankruptcy before this happens. It's not about paying zero taxes and going out and buying a Ferrari. It's about not falling into poverty, right? And what's killing America?
Mhm.
Inflation, big government, and taxes. That's what's
Mhm.
killing the country. It's
Right.
it's bloated governments just blowing money like it's a party, and there's no government funded. It's all taxpayer funded,
Mhm.
and it's not
Mhm.
government funded. It's taxpayer funded. It's not
Mhm.
backed by the full faith and credit of the US government. It's backed by the taxpayer. When a bank fails, the taxpayer has to pick it up. It's not
Right.
it's not government funded. That doesn't exist. It's all
Mm.
taxpayer funded. So if the government creates 10,000 new jobs and they create them, that's directly theft from all the other working Americans and Canadians, but it's not just once because you have to raise their taxes. But then now the inflation comes in later. That's the hidden tax that's stealing from them every day.
Yes.
And then
Mhm.
the government has the audacity to take out food and energy out of the inflation rate to hide the theft. And then you
Yeah.
have Social Security as a tax, and then which was supposed to be tax free. Two, then the government said in 1993, 1983 and 93, oh, let's start taxing that. We'll just tax the rich people, though. No, it wasn't. It was tax on middle America. 93, they did it again. That's tax them again. Let's increase it. But they kept bringing it down, so it's hitting more of middle America. And then they created the 401k. It's tax deferred, right? Okay, so it's tax deferred. You're saving money on taxes. No, it's not. It's actually the opposite. Social
Mm,
Security was a tax. First of all, you paid into a tax.
right.
Two, then you were told it was going to be tax free, which they took that away. And then you put money in your 401k. When you take the money out of your 401k, it can trigger the taxes on your Social Security.
Yeah.
And then they manipulate the inflation rate so your Social Security isn't adjusted for the real inflation rate. Like that's four
Yeah.
or five times from stealing,
Hmm.
directly stealing from the American people,
Yeah.
right?
And for
And doing
those,
it with a smile. Like,
yeah,
elect me, I'm going to help you. I'm like,
yeah,
no more of that.
and
Yeah.
for Canadians, the same is true of the Canada Pension Plan. The same sort of bad economics. This is interesting though because, and I think this is why you focus so much in your 5 point plan. That is the perfect portfolio. It focuses on acquiring assets, not cash. And it's because you don't control all those things that you just talked about that the government does. But if you acquire assets, that's your best protection against things like inflation, right? Because if you have assets, the value of them will actually go up through inflation, won't they?
Yeah, inflation, the rich get rich with inflation. Inflation directly steals from all the poor people and it transfers all the wealth to the rich and to the government, be honest with you. So it's
Yeah,
like when the government inflates something, we're helping the people. All that money gets spent, causes inflation, and it pushes more people in middle America, and it causes more poverty. Printing money does not help the poor. It actually makes the poorer poor, and it makes the middle class poor because they don't know how to invest with inflation.
yeah.
But think about this. Okay, let me give you the most basic example of buy, borrow, die.
Okay, great.
How when somebody buys a home, do they pay cash for it?
No, most people
No.
don't.
No, in the United States, you can put nothing down, or let's say 3%, right?
Yeah,
Okay. When I put 3% down on let's say a $400,000 house, right? So let's say I put 3% down. Let's just say for simplicity, my mortgage was 400,000. I signed a piece of paper. Where did the 400 grand come from? I borrowed it, didn't I?
right.
That means I didn't pay taxes on $400,000. I just pieced of paper, 400 grand is existence. I didn't work or pay taxes on it. I take the 400 grand, go buy a home. I did buy and borrow, didn't I? I
Yes. Yeah.
created currency that didn't exist. I certainly fought inflation, didn't I? I created $400,000 that I'm now investing into real estate. I didn't work for it. We do it all the
Hmm.
time. If you just never sell that house, imagine you put 3% down, you put 12 grand, and that house goes and doubles every 15 years, right? So 15 years later, it's worth 800,000, 1.6, 3.2. You put $15,000 or 12,000 of your money, now you got a $3 million home. If you die, you pass a $3 million home to your family. You didn't pay taxes on the entire thing, did you? You
Wow.
did buy, borrow, die. People do it all the time when they buy a home. They just
Hmm.
don't comprehend what they did right and then they say, "Oh, send an extra principal payments." I'm like, "Wait a second here. Hmm, you just circumvented the US tax system by taking a mortgage and now you're going to do you're going to pay it off? That doesn't make any sense at all. You're ignoring the tax codes."
Right.
Right?
Right.
I love a mortgage. It's all
Mm.
interest. It's all tax deductible for me. Why would I
Mm.
send in extra principal payments? It's dead money now because I can't borrow. I can't get at it too. I'd rather just send those extra payments to buying more real estate or investing in stocks or ETFs and never sell
Hmm.
them.
Hmm.
So it's just the whole thing about go to school, get good grades, oh, get those student loans, get a degree, save money, get good credit, put money in a retirement account, buy a home, pay it off quick. It's exactly the opposite of what the wealthy people are doing.
Yeah.
All of
Wow.
it. I mean,
Wow. You're
I don't
just
need, I don't need, I
exploding.
don't even need,
You're
I,
exploding the myth, Mark.
I don't
You're
even need a credit score to borrow money. I could have a 500 credit score and I can go borrow money at five and a quarter whenever I want with no credit check.
incredible. And so this is what you talk about in chapter 5 when you talk about financial alchemy, transforming bad debt into good debt. That example of the mortgage you just described, that's how you do it. That's one example of how you do it, right?
Yeah, so we have a lot of basic things. We have people that come into it's a course, the perfect portfolio, and they have a bunch of credit card debt. One of our students, real, we changed her name, but she had $22,000 of high interest credit card debt. I'm like, that's financial cancer. We got to get rid of that stuff. So she had a brokerage account at one of the big brokers. We transferred it over. It's a tax-free transfer. It was 52 grand. She just transferred it over. She pressed the borrow button. She borrowed at six and a quarter at the time, I think it was. And she sent the $22,000 to her bank account and then paid off all her credit card debt. All her high interest credit card debt at like 27% interest, 28% interest was all gone. She goes, I was paying $950 a month for that. I got $950 a month. She just now funnels that into her brokerage account. She's still got the entire 52 grand in the brokerage account. Now she can funnel the 950 in there and she's building her future. So she transformed bad debt into good debt, into an asset
Hmm.
that's growing and you're feeding it all the time. So you buy, borrow, die is simply fund the assets forever and never sell them. For the rest of my life, I have a very simple plan. I can, if I earn money, I'm going to keep funneling it into my assets as much as possible. I'll never stop and I'll never sell. And if I have dividends, I'm never going to take a dividend. I'll always reinvest the money. I need money. I'll just take a loan, create money that didn't exist. I'll live off of that. Live
Right,
off the
right.
borrow it.
Wow.
So,
So let's say coming back to the book now, someone Joe Average, the millionaire next door,
yeah,
makes the $6 million applying your principles, the SMART system.
yep.
Now, chapter 15 is about shielding your wealth. Now you've built wealth. How do you protect it? What's that all about?
Um, so obviously you want to buy assets that get a step up in basis. A step up in basis means that when you die, whatever you bought the asset for, it transfers to your heirs with no taxes, right?
Right. Hmm.
Obviously, long-term care insurance is really really important. Um, you want to see something scary, go to a state-funded long-term care facility. If you want to see something scary, you just don't want to end up there. So long-term care is very expensive for protecting your assets and it's asset protection. You can get that for like 10 or 20 bucks a month in a life insurance policy these days. So um and then you want to protect your income. Basic life insurance is important. Term is very cheap life insurance. There's certain riders. Again, we really dig down
Hmm.
the rabbit hole of life insurance, but I also think I simplify it. Like I think you said, I kind of simplify it and give you acronyms,
Yes.
TCCC, and kind of really do that. So I try and take that world of okay, if I was speaking to somebody who's the guy building my deck or whatever, how would I explain this stuff? So I mean, I've
Hmm.
been trying to. I started the first book in 2009, so I've been practicing and training people and trying to keep it simple since 2009. So it's I got a lot of practice.
I found the your explanation of insurance really interesting because most people don't think about insurance and they have no idea the variety of insurance products that are available and their incredible wealth building power as well as their application to avoid income tax. And I find this is something that the insurance business doesn't do a very good job of marketing these products. And most people don't know about many of the products that you talk about in your book that are really incredible in terms of building assets and protecting them against tax.
Yeah, this is definitely a double-edged sword area. First of all, if you go buy insurance from a publicly traded bank or something that's owned by a publicly traded, they have a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholder, meaning the information that you get is probably fed to you to maximize profitability. So there's a again, we don't talk about fiduciaries
Yeah.
maybe a little later, but yeah, for sure. And then also, it's just unfortunately a lot of these YouTubers you see and Instagram guys running around talking about these amazing things, they make money selling you a really large life insurance policy and
Ah,
huge money. So this is a double-edged sword. I don't want people running out saying that life insurance is the savior of my future. No,
right.
life insurance is to protect your income if you die, first of all. Two, real long-term care insurance. I'm talking qualified. Most life insurance companies don't have real long-term, so there's tax penalties coming across the United States if you don't purchase long-term care. So you could be
Ah,
taxed, you could lose your assets. And you
Mm.
got to be careful of these guys. There's almost no regulation in the area of selling life insurance. So unfortunately, I see a lot of guys on jumping around on YouTube. They're either lying completely and there's no consequences. So you got to be really careful on this one. So I,
Yeah.
I just use life insurance as protect my income, protect my assets. I use it as a bank, but I'm very specific on how I do it. I'll funnel lots of money in there. It grows with no taxes. If there's a stock market crash, I'm just going to borrow to buy stocks or real estate or something. But again,
Hmm.
I'm using it for assets, borrowing to buy other assets, right?
Hmm.
And I'm financially sophisticated. So I've been doing this a long
Yeah.
time. But baby steps, just
Hmm.
start with a little bit. I recently met this guy messaged me. He says, I'm an HVAC worker, and he goes, could I learn this? I'm like, okay, what? Could you teach me HVAC? I'm like, he goes, yeah, I guess so. Do you know how long it would take me to learn do HVAC? Like, that's not exactly easy. I can teach him this way faster than I could
Yeah, he's
learn
Joe. He's
HVAC.
Joe next door, right? Yeah.
Are you kidding me? You know how much time it would take me to go get a license and learn how to do HVAC? I mean,
Yeah.
talking years. I can teach somebody this in, I don't know, 100 hours. And video courses, there's tons of YouTube content. There's like so much stuff. It's much easier to get financial independent just studying the basics of money and studying the
Hmm.
system than it is working for a living. I guarantee it.
That I'm so glad that you used that phrase, because I was just thinking that really what you're teaching and what you're showing people how to do is how to gain financial independence. And really, if we were to poll people, that's really what people are looking for when they talk about, oh, I want to make more money. I want to have money for retirement. I want to do this. Really, those are just sort of aspects of the core concept of financial independence, and that's really what you're teaching. I want to ask you a little bit about chapter 19. I found this very interesting, where you talk about turning losses into gains, how tax loss harvesting can save you money. This is something that honestly was a totally new concept. I've never heard of this before. So I really found this interesting. You want to explain a little bit about how that works?
Okay, so if you buy a bunch of stocks and the stocks crash and you've lost money there, simple, sell the stock and buy another stock or ETF. You realize the gain, you realize the loss. So we want to realize losses and replace it with a somewhat similar position. Again, you have to figure out how to do this and stay within compliant with the IRS. Again, I don't give financial advice or tax advice, but yeah, you just understand the basics. I mean, if I was holding a stock and the stock market crashes, I'll just go into my brokerage account, sell it really quick. I want to realize the loss. I don't want to realize the gains. I can buy another similar stock or something like that. I want to grow it. So I'll never sell because I don't want to realize the gains, but I want to realize the losses. So tax loss harvesting is pretty simple. Um, Again, you want to make sure you understand how, make sure you're compliant with the IRS when you're going to realize the loss. So it has to be significantly different. It can't be like, anyways. So, but yeah, tax loss harvesting is just a pretty simple thing. I do it November, December, but I should do it in the year. If I see a stock, I'm like, oh, that one down, and I see another one, I'm like, I like that one. I'll just sell the other one and replace it with another one. I'll realize the loss, saves me on taxes.
Hmm. Folks, we're talking with Mark Quann. He's a best-selling author on investing and let's say tax planning and tax avoidance. And we're talking about his latest book, which is called Pay Zero Taxes. There's a quotation from the book I want to share with you. There's many quotable parts of this book. This one really stuck out for me, Mark. You say there are lots of smart people in the world, and being smart does have its advantages. IQ does play a role in how much money you make, but the good news is that it will not be the deciding factor defining your success. And if you become rich or if you become poor, you say, I was never the smartest guy in the class. There were always other students with a higher IQ, but I was smart enough to discover a simple formula that I've used to get where I am today. And I love these three principles that you apply here. The first one is first, I decide, capital letters, folks, decide where I want to be in the future. Then I find people that are where I want to be and I follow their advice. And the third one is he outworks everybody, everybody else in the space. That three-step approach is really important, especially the first one, where you talk about making a decision. And that word, people don't really understand what that word means. It actually means to cut away. It means to cut away all of the other excess and dross. The best analogy I would have is, if you were a butcher and you were trying to, produce the best cuts of steak, fine filet mignon from that, you'd have a side of beef. You cut everything else away, and what was left on the table would be those fine, perfect steaks, and everything else would be on the floor. And you wouldn't pick up what's on the floor and put it back on the table and try to put the side of beef back together again. You've made a decision. You've cut away, and that's a big part of what you're talking about here, isn't it, Mark?
Yeah, my dad always struggled his life. He had, my dad used to probably smoke too much and drink too much, like most Canadian construction working families, and that's kind of we're all doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But my dad told me something. He said, you can do whatever you want, and I was like, what? He goes, yeah, just believe it, and you can do whatever you want. I was like, okay. I believed it. I mean, so I was like, I don't care. I'm super broke. I'm super poor. I want to go to California. I can, and got a job as a security guard, and kind of figured out that if you just decide you want something, here's what it is. It's called a reticular activator. Okay.
Hmm.
If you're
Interesting.
looking for something, you're going to see it. If you're not looking for something, you're not going to see it. Okay.
Right.
Let's say for somebody just not thinking about finance, they're going to see this thing and then they're not even going to look at it. What if somebody's like, I need tax avoidance? Suddenly they're going to see the book. They're going to be like, what's going on? It's everything in life. If you believe you can do something, you say, I believe I can do this, then your brain turns off and it looks for solutions on how to do it. Okay.
Hmm.
Remember,
Hmm.
I was a high school dropout, college dropout, hated school and reading, but I decided I wanted to write a book. I didn't know how long it was going to take. So I went to some events. They told me read, write, and think. I'm like, well, I can read, I can write, I can think. Maybe I can do this. Took me 5 years to write the first one, but I decided.
And now
But
there are
what
four books, right?
now I got 4 books. Yeah. After 5 years of writing a book, you're like, I'm never going to write one, but then, it happens or whatever. But so I'll give you another example. I'm like sitting there during coronavirus. I'm like, what am I going to do? Oh, I'll start a financial education company. Don't know what I'm going to train, but let's do it. Get my friends together. Let's do it. I don't know what we're going to do, but let's try some stuff. Right. I was like, hey, man, I get, whatever. I'll charge $1,500 for it. We'll teach people for 8 weeks. But I wrote down some goals and I said, what do I want to do with this company? I said, oh, we're going to teach ordinary Americans and I'm going to create 1 million new millionaires. I was like, I was like, huh, is that possible? Like, you know what? Decided. It's done. I'm going to create 1 million new millionaires. This is before we had a course, before we had anything. We didn't know what buy, borrow, die was. But I said, I'm going to create 1 million new millionaires. Here we are today.
Yeah.
Suddenly I got the best selling textbook in the United States. Still don't have a high school diploma. Still hate reading. Still don't like reading today. Just decide to do something, put the work in it, hang around with the people that are going in the same direction. Some people don't want to change their associations. Like, oh, that ain't gonna work. You become the average of the 5 people you hang around with most, right? So
Mm.
I hang around with all entrepreneurs. If somebody's not thinking bigger and doing something, I'm just not going to spend some time with them, with very few exceptions, right? So
Hmm.
I just decided to do that, and I fast forward 5 years from now, I've created a 1 million new millionaires. People say that's impossible. Like, just wait and see. I love it when people tell
Yeah.
me I can't do something.
Yeah. And what a benefit to society. I mean, well, look what that does. That improves individual national GDP. And what I really enjoy about listening to you, and what I really enjoyed about your book, is that financial books often talk in terms of scarcity. But what you talk about is abundance. You say, look, it's out there. It's out there for you and you and you and like you say,
Yeah.
you can create all these new millionaires. There are no limits. It's abundancy, and I think that is such a great message, and it's one that people don't hear enough. The way that retirement is sold as a product on TV is the exact opposite of what you're talking about. Oh, will you have enough for retirement? Well, of course you will.
Mhm.
It's out there. You just have to go and get it. But as you say, you have to make a decision. You have to learn. You have to get yourself aligned with get in the company of people who are like-minded. That's going to help you. Your sort of brain trust, and also you have to work at it. You have to do the work.
Oh,
And
I'm
but I think this concept of abundancy is a very powerful theme in your book. And it reminds me of another book that you've probably read by Napoleon Hill called Think and Grow
yeah,
Rich.
definitely.
And it's the same concept. And the best books on this, on building wealth, which I what I think your book is really about, talk in terms of abundancy. Was that a conscious effort in your part, or is that just sort of come naturally to your way of thinking?
No, I didn't. I would say didn't think like other people. Like I just
Hmm.
didn't. I wouldn't go to school. Like I just wouldn't go to school. I was like something about school was interesting. I was skeptical. I was like, why are these people telling me to do this and do that and I'm supposed to do that and I'm supposed to get a job and I'm supposed to sit there and do that and go to the bathroom and I was like, something just doesn't feel right about this. I had something in my gut. I was like, I'm just not going to school anymore. No, you can't. I go to school. Okay, go to school and jump the friends and go hang out with my friends or whatever, right?
Hmm.
So I didn't like that. But I was like, hey, I got to go to college for finance. I'm going to be a financial guy. I should go to college or whatever. And then sitting there in college, I'm like, student loans, credit card debts. And I was like, this is weird because the professors there was this one guy, and he told me that I need to understand the statistics, and he's like, "You need to understand the formulas for this test." I'm like, "But wait, the other professor doesn't require the formulas." He goes, "Well, you got to do what you're told." I'm like, "Really? Okay. So why do I have to go be in your class anymore? Because you got to get this class to get your diploma." I'm like, "Oh, wait a second. Why do I need a diploma?" Okay, because you got to go get a job. I'm like, "Well, I don't want a job." Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I think people realize that you got to learn to think differently. You have to question things. I've
Right.
always questioned things. Like I've always
Mhm.
questioned, you need to do that. Need? Really? I need food. I need water. I don't think I need to do that. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Whatever. So I just always question things. Um, but this is the coolest thing about this book is that anybody can do it. I don't care. Start with $100. We have baby steps. We're like, okay, everyone's kind of concerned about this debt thing. Well, good. Put $100 in there. Try it out. Kick the tires on it. You want to do
Yeah.
$25 a week? Great, do that. When you hit to
Mhm.
2,500 bucks, press the borrow button, send it to your bank account, see what happens.
Yeah.
Nothing explodes. You just go, huh? I created money. See, anybody
Yeah.
can do this. And you already did it. If anyone's ever bought a home and you put a small down payment, you created hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. Ooh, debt bad. No, you created hundreds of thousands of dollars. You didn't work for it. You didn't pay taxes. You actually fought inflation with inflation. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
people do it. They're already doing it. The rich don't
Mhm.
buy real estate and pay it off. They buy real estate, increase the value, borrow from real estate to buy real estate because they're buying real estate with debt. And then they're borrowing from that real estate, which is more debt to accumulate more debt. You're like, well, that's a bad idea. But wait a second. How
Mhm.
come all the wealthy people got wealthy using real estate? Because they understand debt. You know, what I mean? It's really simple. You're already
Yeah.
doing it. It's just,
Yeah.
you're fighting inflation, you're fighting taxation, you're fighting government that's just bloated in size and always going to take more. You know what I mean? The
Mhm.
only way you can fight that is this method: buy, borrow, die. It's the system that billionaires use. So there's no other system I've found. I've spent 60,000 hours on trying to solve this problem, and this is it. This is the
Yeah.
best I've ever found. After
Mhm.
15 years in the financial industry, training financial advisors, this is it. There's
Mhm.
nothing better. If I find something else, I'll write another book on it, but this is it. All right.
Well, it's
It's
a
it. And it
great.
works.
It's a great message. It's a wonderful system, and it's a really great book. I enjoyed reading it. I learned a lot from reading it. I learned even more from sitting down and talking with you. And we're really grateful for this conversation to have some of your time to explain. I mean, as you say, 60,000 hours of study revealed in this book. And so this book is being added to our reading list. In fact, two of the four books that Mark has written are being added to our reading list. The first one, the one we've been talking about with our guest, is Be Smart, Pay Zero Taxes, Use the Buy, Borrow, Die strategy to get rich and stay rich. And by the way, folks, don't be confused by the title. You don't have to die to enjoy this.
No.
The die part is you're building wealth for future generations, which is something that
Yeah.
most people, especially parents and grandparents, want. And Mark tells you exactly how to do that, and really to do it effortlessly. It flows naturally from the SMART system. The other book that Mark wrote earlier, we mentioned it a little bit, is called Top 10 Ways to Avoid Taxes: A Guide to Wealth Accumulation. I should mention these books are available on Amazon. Also, you can visit Mark's X page or his website, and there are links available to buy his books. Um, we're going to provide those links as well to you if you want to check out these books, and I recommend that you do. I've read the first or the most recent book. I haven't yet read Top 10 Ways to Avoid Taxes, but I'm going to. In this one, he talks about strategies for building wealth and avoiding excessive taxation for one of the most original finance thinkers of our time. I think that's very true. I think Mark is, if anything else, he's not only SMART, he's also original. So, Mark, I want to turn it back to you. And obviously, you mentioned the 60,000 hours. I wonder if there are other books, other resources that you would recommend to people. I know in your book, you mentioned Robert Kiyosaki's really seminal book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's a great one, an interesting one. Although I have to say about that book, I didn't find the way Robert Kiyosaki presented that system as being as accessible as what you talk about is. Some of what he talks about actually kind of went over my head, to be honest. But are there any other books or resources that you would recommend to people besides your own books and perhaps Mr. Kiyosaki's book?
I don't want to sound like pretty like egotistical here. No, this is the first book ever written on this topic. There's never been a this doesn't exist. And the fact is, this was impossible to do 4 years ago.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
just, I actually didn't, I started a financial education school and then came up, I was using the strategy, but I didn't have a name for it. I didn't name it. It was a University of Southern California. And here's the thing, you got to teach this to your kids when they turn 18. Here's why.
Yeah.
That's all they know. You're like, oh, that sounds scary. Teach an 18-year-old this. I've been doing this too. It's kind of fun. Their 18th birthday, put 2,500 bucks in their brokerage account, and then they press the button. They don't think, oh no, I just went to debt. They go, whoa, I just made money and didn't have to work for it. That's all they know. They don't
Mhm.
question it at all. It's totally normal for them. And your family gets wealthy. I mean, it's
You're
just,
definitely
you're like,
you're describing my sons perfectly, Mark.
oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, you teach an 18-year-old to just invest and then press buttons and then create money, and it's like, wait a second, I just keep investing and then I could live off the borrow button and never work and never pay taxes. Yes, you can. So
Mhm.
do that. And there's a saying that I say: be pay less taxes and be more charitable. You know what? One of the
Yeah,
coolest things in this course is that all there's okay. So some people go, all right, I make 150,000 a year. I'm going to donate 15,000 to my church every year or charity, whatever, right? So they want to do it. I'm like, cool. Tell you what, don't donate the 15,000 to your church. Donate your money, invest it, take a margin loan, and donate 15,000 to the church. What did you just
mhm,
do? The 15,000 that was gone is now invested. If you had 40 or 50,000 in your brokerage account, you take a margin loan for 15, donate it to your church. You just donated it to your church with money that didn't exist and it was never taxable. Technically, it's a double tax deduction, and now the government has to give you money back. Take the money that you get on the tax refund, put it in your brokerage account, rinse and repeat. And you basically built your wealth. You can retire with dignity. You're not going to fall into the system. You can teach this to your kids and you can live life with a purpose. Get wealthy, give back, and have purpose.
Wonderful. Well, as the good book says, the Lord loves a generous giver, and you can be a generous giver if you follow the right principles to build wealth, and you understand that we live in a world of abundancy and not scarcity. So we want to thank you for this message, Mark, and also for your books and for your taking the time to be with us today as our special guest to really to pass on some really timeless principles that you talk about, and proven principles of wealth building and tax avoidance. So, Mark, thanks once again for being with us to talk about your best-selling books. And we wish you much continued success and looking forward to the next book.
It's gonna be a little bit. That was a lot of work. I was working 9, 10 months night and day. It was a lot of work. So it's gonna take a little bit. Let's run this one up the flagpole. We got the audiobook coming out next week, so that's gonna be great.
Great.
And hopefully we'll get some books on Amazon because we keep running out. So it's a good problem to have.
Yes, for sure. And I'm not surprised. It is a great book. I really enjoyed reading it. Thanks for writing it. And again, thanks for being our special guest.
Thanks for buying the book, and I look forward to chatting again soon.
Thanks, Mark.